All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very exclusive special of Dr. J, not Dr. J Radio Live, because there is no guest. It's just me. Let's go to the chat real quick, and I want to thank, of course, Third Phase of Moon. Literally, if it wasn't for the Cousins brothers, I would not be here doing this today. So my hat's off to them, and literally, if you guys are not paying attention to UFO videos, and you haven't heard of Third Phase of Moon, then really you are in the dark. If you want to see the best of the best, be sure to check out their YouTube channel. Let's see who else is in the chat. We have Mike. I hope I say this correctly. Negus. Mike, I hope I said that properly. All right. So, as I promised earlier this week, I'm going to tell you two phenomena, and this is not from hearing from other people. This is my very, very own testimony. And I could drag this out too, folks, if you want to hear other stories of how I got into UFOs, how I got started with Third Phase of the Moon, because if it, like I said, if it wasn't for them, and a very, very important event in May of 2013, I would not be doing this. Let's actually go back in time first. 2007, I was a young law student, skydiver, going to Loyola Law School and getting my JD, as well as Pepperdine School of Law. Ironic, huh? School of Law. And Pepperdine, I was getting my certificate in dispute resolution. That particular day, I was running late for class, and I had to do my laundry. And because of where I was living in the city near Hollywood, you had to pay for laundry, of course. There was nothing in my apartment. I decided to go to the San Fernando Valley and get my laundry done at my folks' house. So the laundry was done. I had to stop at the time AT&T store to get something repaired on a cell phone and then run to class. I was late. Regardless, as before I even made it to AT&T store, I was making, if you're familiar with the San Fernando Valley, then you probably know of the Northridge Mall. It was near the Northridge Mall. I was traveling west on Nordhoff and was making a left into a driveway. I was hit from behind by a 90s blue Toyota Supra, and I ended up in a pole. Now, I would release a picture for you folks of what I look like after that, but I guarantee you YouTube would consider it too graphic, demonetize it, all of the above. So let's just leave it at that. If you really, really want to see it, then you can email me and I will show you a picture of what I look like after one surgery. And mind you, there's been almost 3 dozen in between. Now, this is the first part, explaining why life flashes before your eyes before you die. So, from the moment I was hit from behind, this is what happened. I got hit from behind, and within a second and a half to 2 seconds, I hit a pole, and my head went into the pole. I mean, not into the pole, into the windshield and backwards, therefore ripping my face down the middle between my eyebrows, literally from where my hairline is, above my right ear. And I was literally, this is graphic, folks, hanging off the thread of my eyelid. I mean, if you could picture that. I literally touched my skull. I warned you folks, graphic. And if you want to know what it sounds like the moment time goes back to normal, it's like someone turns on the faucet and boom, there you are. Just, it sounds like the faucet goes from nothing to 100 and it's just pouring. It turns out it was my blood. So back to a second and a half, 2 seconds before. As I was making this left turn, I noticed or felt a bump. Okay, so I felt a bump. And in your mind, because your mind goes so fast, it felt like I was starting to slow down. The time was slowing down. So I realized that, hold on a second, I don't think I'm going to make it into this driveway. And mind you, in the 1.5 to 2 seconds from the time it took me to get hit to the time I hit the pole, which is about 20 feet or so, traveling about 45-ish miles, maybe a little bit less since I was in the middle of a left turn, it literally seemed like almost, I don't want to say a lifetime, but maybe 10, 15 minutes, because I had probably 20 to 30 thoughts. So as I get hit from behind, I realize that, hold on, I'm not going to make it into this driveway. Okay, no big deal. And, okay, mind you, this is a 27-year-old in 2007. This is what the thoughts are. Then I realized that, uh-oh, not only am I not going to make it into the driveway, I'm going to hit this curb. And first thing in my mind is like, great, I'm going to need to get towed from here. How am I going to get to class? Then the next thought that came into my mind was like, uh-oh, I'm going fast enough to where not only am I going to hit this curb and probably burst at least the front passenger tire, I think I might go over it and actually cause some damage in my car. And that's where my parents in my mind came to my mind where they're going to get mad at me. They're like, why did you wreck your car? What are you doing late in school? This is, again, what a 27-year-old thinks after leaving their folks' house. Then, mind you, I'm only telling you some thoughts. There's just so many that go through your mind in this short amount of time. The next thought was, okay, hold on a second. I'm going to hit this pole, but I think I'm actually going to total this car. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is not good. Now I'm really going to need to get towed out of here. How the heck am I going to make it to class? Then as I started to jump the curb and started getting closer to this pole, which was a steel pole, metal, or no, sorry, not metal, concrete pole, I realized that my car is just going to be totaled. I'm totally screwed. And again, my thought was not on me. It was on class, being late, professor, and of course, family being mad, not because of what I'm doing to myself, but because I wrecked something of value. So then, as I'm getting closer to this concrete pole, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in a Honda. These Hondas crunch very easily. And the pole was literally right in the center of my car. I was approaching it with both headlights on literally probably equal sides from the pole. So if you could picture a pole and you could picture a car, imagine driving dead center, kind of like that picture I have on YouTube right now, what you're seeing. If you see that pedestrian right there, imagine your car is just mowing him down with he's in the middle. The next thought was as I was making contact with this concrete pole, I was like, oh no, I think I might get hurt. Can I still make the class? This is the mind I'm in, right? Then of course, it's starting to crunch just like I expect. It's a Honda. So the next thought was like, uh-oh, I think I'm going to need ambulance. I think I'm going to have to get transported out of here. Great. There goes class for tonight. And who knows from that point on. Then, this is where it starts to get even crazier. My next thought, as I hit this, literally, as I hit this pole and I see it start to create a V in my car because the Honda Civic is just crunching against this. Again, I don't want to say ceramic or anything like that, like metal. It's literally a cement pole. It's crunching it. So there's a V. And I realized I am not wearing a seatbelt. I had taken it off because I was in a hurry, taking it off to make a left turn so I make it to AT&T store. And remember, time is going super slow because your mind thinks so fast. Then I start to realize that I'm airborne. I'm like, oh no, not only am I not wearing my seatbelt, I'm airborne. I think I might get really hurt from this car accident. Then, as I'm airborne, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, folks and friends and family, for whatever I've done. I hope I've been a good son, and I'm sorry I died early. That's literally the thought I had. I thought I was dying, like as I'm literally airborne, going through or about to hit this windshield. Then my head goes through the windshield. The pole literally carves like a V from the car, literally from going from the Civic hitting this cement pole. And then all of a sudden, as I'm jolted forward and my head breaks a hole in the windshield, I realize there's a jerk back. And that is what caused my face to rip. So as I jolt back and into the seat, I'm like, whoa, I'm alive. And that is, I believe Lars here wrote, faucet, exactly. That's exactly what I thought. The very first sound, before you hear smoke, before you hear like any of the boiling or anything that comes from a car accident, it sounded like someone took a faucet and turned it full blast. And it was my head pouring out blood. And of course, I didn't realize it until, of course, I start seeing it all over me and it landed on my hands. Now, this whole story is to illustrate to you why life flashes before your eyes before you die. Life does not flash before your eyes before you die. Your mind thinks so darn fast. This is what happens, that literally in that 1.5 to 2 seconds, I had 20 to 30 thoughts. So let's just say you're skydiving and you've never been a skydiver before. I guarantee you, in that last 500 to 1,000 feet, which at terminal velocity, normal people, if without a parachute, fall between 5 to 6 seconds at 1,000 feet, you're going to have so many thoughts. That's why people say they see their life flashes before your eyes. You're going to think of your children. You're going to think of your spouse. You're going to think of your family. You're going to think of your friends. You're going to think of the great stuff you've done, and you might even think of the stuff that you were sorry for. Regardless, in that 1.5 to 2 seconds, I went from thinking I might miss class to my car being okay all the way to like, uh-oh, I'm dead. And yes, I told you several of these thoughts, but mind you, there were several more that were related. So as I say, I'm about to die from the point I was when I realized I thought that I might be really injured. There are several more thoughts relating to that, like how injured am I going to be? What am I going to break? How long am I going to be in the hospital? And so on and so forth. Again, like I said, folks, for those of you who joined late, if you do want to see why or what it looks like when you lose half your face, I can show you that picture, but you have to email me because I cannot post it publicly because I will get demonetized, I will get banned, it'll be too graphic. And let me just give you a forethought about this. Mind you, this picture was taken by a friend after I had one surgery, after I had been released several weeks later, and before I'd go back to the second surgery. Now we're talking over 30 surgeries later, and on my face alone, probably, honestly, I lost count. I'd say about 18, including creating an eyebrow in there, and just there's so much. So if you guys want to see it, the email is drjradiolive@gmail, drjradiolive. Now, third phase of moon, great guys. I'll tell you that story because this sort of leads into the next story. I've been watching their channel and I was an avid fan 2012, 2013, and all of a sudden this video came up of this guy who says he could summon UFOs at will. And at the time I was studying for the bar exam, I was like, whoa, this is in LA, downtown, not too far from where I used to live in the city. I said, well, here's the idea. If I go and this guy produces nothing, well, I could say I studied all day long at the park. If something happens, well, then not only will I see it, I have a camera with me. Maybe I could record it. Sure enough, I recorded it, sent the video to Third Phase of Moon. If you guys go back 6 years, Third Phase of Moon, check it out. You will see that very famous video, which I believe has gone viral by now. And that's what got me started working with them. And then hence, if you want to know another secret private thing, where Dr. J was born, because I got my JD, hence doctorate, Juris Doctorate. Instead of just saying John, because I was a big fan of J. Allen Hynek, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and my middle name was Andy, Dr. J. Andy Elias. Well, come to shorten it up, Dr. J. So the basketball player, sorry, buddy, you got to take back seat because you do not have a doctorate. I do. I'm not trying to be greedy here, but that's the fact of the matter. When he gets a doctorate, then I guess he can reclaim his throne. Now, let's fast forward to what happened in 2014. Now, I do want to warn you guys, please do not trust the U.S. medical system. They really cause problems. You go in for one problem and they will create so many mistakes that it'll lead to so much more. That particular, I could even tell you the date. It was August 9th. I remember this because it was a week after the bar exam. The bar exam was that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, July 30th, 31st, August 1st. The surgery was a week later on that Friday, August 9th. I went in there for a double surgery, and this is just typical insurance. They want to cover the surgery, but they don't want to cover anesthesia. They knew there was obviously things to correct on my face because of this car accident, but they didn't want to pay for the anesthesia. So to bend the little tricks and stuff from the doctors, they decide to do a tonsillectomy, which was needed anyway. Therefore, if I'm under anesthesia, they could perform this other surgery which would have been 5,000 just for the anesthesia. Now, the surgery goes fine, and I had had so many at that point. I know all the protocols to get the heck out of there. I mean, you got to drink, you got to go to the bathroom, you got to eat food without vomiting. I mean, I literally had everything planned just to literally wake up and be out within 30 minutes instead of hours, if not a full day. I'm leaving, and a family member is driving me home, and of course, I'm feeling groggy from this anesthesia. And man, I'm starting to coughing up liquid, and I knew something was up, but I wondered, why am I coughing up liquid? So I get home, and of course I'm groggy. I just want to pass out. And thankfully, my brother, who was kept checking on me, was very concerned because he said I was gurgling. And next thing I know, I'm asleep. Mind you, I'm totally unconscious. Paramedics storm into my room, and I really can't tell what's going on other than the fact that they literally get me out of the house, in downstairs on a gurney, make it to the hospital. And I recall the priest being there and the doctors and everything, and basically saying I will not survive the night. My oxygen level, my saturation level was at 32. That's pretty darn low, folks. If you're 32, you're going to be dead. I shouldn't have survived the night, but they did say that I have about a 1% chance, or if that, if I get intubated. Well, I'm not going to say no at that point. And let me tell you, folks, if you're ever intubated or you're about to be, it is not a pleasant experience at all. In order for me not to choke on it, in order for me not to move, because your muscles or your throat does have reflexes, gag reflexes. You're going to be choking on this darn tube that's down your throat. They put me on a propofol drip. Now, I could see and I could hear, but I cannot move. As a matter of fact, the cousin's brother sent a good friend of ours, which is actually a good friend of theirs, a cameraman, who came to check on me. And I can't even turn my head to say hi or just even wink at him. And yet the nurses are sitting there talking about random stuff, and I could hear everything. I mean, some of the worst experience I had was when I was literally twisted. My body was facing one way and my head was facing another, and I could not untwist myself. I was literally asphyxiating. I mean, I literally said, okay, I guess it's time for me to die. I said my goodbyes, and I prayed I would, not live through that disaster. And sure enough, 4 hours later, fortunately, the nurse who was the head nurse came in there and gave the other nurse a lecture and untwisted me. Now, about 5 days later, after I've been intubated, and you do not sleep, trust me, you do not sleep when you have a tube down your throat, you're on a propofol drip, and you're experiencing the worst thing in your life. They say that I have to go or be induced into a coma. And the only way I'm going to survive is if they can induce me into a coma and drain my lungs. Because what happened is during the surgery, mind you, folks, this is very personal. You will never ever hear this anywhere else. This is the first time I'm publicly talking about this. So, while I am undergoing this coma or being induced into this coma, what happens is they put me with more propofol. And again, even though I had less than a 1% chance to survive the first night, I knew without a doubt I would live, except for that time when I was being twisted. But when I was about to be induced into the coma, they're telling my family that, hey, he probably won't survive, but this is the best we can do. I knew without a doubt I'm a fighter. I'm going to wake up. I never once thought that I wouldn't wake up from this coma. Now, here's the irony. I knew, and because they said this to my family when they induced me into this coma, there's no brain function. It would be like I'd be dead, in a coma breathing, and then all of a sudden awake days, weeks later. So, I'm induced in this coma. I remember this injection of propofol, and I'm out like a switch. But there's two parts to this NDE. Clearly, I must have died for a period of time. The first part, I don't think is that relevant unless you guys and gals really want to hear about it. The first person I really told was, as a matter of fact, Yvonne Smith, because she is an alien abduction specialist. I figured maybe she could make some sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say idea, but make sense of what the first part was. The second part I'm going to tell you because it is fits the classical NDE. So I live in right now San Fernando Valley, Northridge, California. At the time in 2007, I was living near Hollywood, where I went to school in downtown and also Malibu. For some reason, in this coma, I knew I was on PCH walking in San Pedro in Long Beach. And as I was walking, I remember that there was two-story apartment buildings on both sides, so I could not see the ocean. The first part involves this weird looking van. And like I said, I won't get into it unless you guys want to hear it because I still can't make sense of it. But the second part is, well, Lars actually wants to hear about it. Okay, well, don't laugh, guys, because I'm just telling you that like this is, I really can't make sense of this first part. The second part's what's relevant. The first part is as I'm walking, it seems to me like I see a silver VW bus. That's what came to my mind. A VW bus just parked on the left side of the road, which would have been, let's see, that would have been the east side of Pacific Coast Highway. And because we have a lot of Hispanics in Southern California, particularly people who have crossed over from Mexico, I don't know why I was drawn to this weird looking silver VW bus, which I thought was a VW bus with no wheels. How's that weird? No wheels, right? And I go into it, and for some reason my mind says they're Mexican. Why? I don't know, but they're bald heads, they're really short, and they're not talking. Weird, right? I mean, beyond weird. Here's the craziest part is as I'm in this weird van, there's no steering wheel, there's no seats, there's just a bench. And from the inside, not only does it look as silver as the outside did, it's circular. And I remember sitting down on this bench, clothes on. So it's not an abduction, but clothes on. And these, like I said, for some reason, even in my coma, bald head Mexicans, two of them are sitting down next to me to my left side, and one is sitting in front of me or standing in front of me. They're very, very short. And yet when they're talking, their mouths aren't moving. What the heck do you make of that? That's why I told Yvonne Smith. She wants to put me under. I'm very hard to be hypnotized. We'll see what comes out of that. Now let's get to the part that you cannot deny. So I remember after the van, I'm walking further down PCH, south, Pacific Coast Highway. And there's an entrance, meaning an open way from these apartment buildings to the beach. So I see it and I decide, let's go to the beach. Weird, huh? You're in a coma, let's go to the beach. So I started walking towards this beach, and then this is where things get really crazy but cool. All of a sudden, first of all, I looked behind me and those apartments are gone. It's just a field to infinity. I look on either side of me and what should have been apartments, because that's where I went through, were also gone to infinity. The golden sand I'm on is like glistening. And the sun is so perfect, I could feel the warmth on my skin. I could see the glistening on the ocean. I mean, it's just beautiful. And the craziest part, folks, is it looked and felt like the wind and the air was made of light. So every time there was a gust of wind, it felt more bright. And I'm not talking about like, okay, your eyes are just brighter. I'm talking about like literally, if you put your hand in front of you, you will see the air between you and your hand glow, literally. And I'm not talking about one particular area, I'm talking about everything. So I'm on this beach, beautiful sun, glistening ocean, and I see a boat to my left. And it's on the beach. It's a beach boat. I don't know what drew me to it, and it was all white, and it's not quite a fishing boat. It's not even a yacht, but it has a bow astern, obviously, and it looked like not quite a stateroom, but something where people can sort of drive the boat below. And I noticed there was three people on there. And so I went, for some reason, I went onto the boat that was beached, which would have been around Zuma Beach, somewhere near there, near Malibu, near Long Beach, near San Pedro. I don't really remember what the the man and the woman that were sitting down were doing or saying because I was drawn to the man standing up. Now, in this coma, mind you, I have no brain activity. In this coma, it feels like a couple of minutes that went by in the van, and I'm on this boat chatting with this guy who's maybe we're going out for 5 to 7 minutes. That's what it feels like. But I have no clue what we're saying. I don't remember any of it. All of a sudden, and mind you, each time the wind picks up, the air is golden, literally golden, and I can't even see the guy in front of me or the people sitting down. And then a thought hits me, and I just realized. I said, "Didn't you die in 1987?" And he smiles and says, "Yes." And then the air or the wind starts gusting that much more, and to the point that I'm blinded, and boom, I am awake. And turns out, of course, I mean, that's why I made the realization when I was in the coma. He was someone. He was a friend of my father. And in 1987, they were doing some construction at an old house we lived in. They were filling in a fish pond because some children fell in the fish pond at a previous birthday party I had. One weekend, he didn't show up. And I asked my father, "Where did Bill go?" And he said he passed away. Clearly, at that point, at age 7, I had known people who had passed away, including my grandfathers on both sides. But for some reason, I don't know why he struck me more. Maybe because he seemed perfectly healthy. I was like, how could he have a heart attack? I mean, he's fine. He was just doing exercise. I'm used to people being in hospitals for weeks on end before they pass away. But he, in fact, was someone that died. And when he said yes and he smiled, and then that light lit up, I mean, I could literally. There's nothing that can happen. I mean, no matter how many years can pass. Well, I remember this so darn vividly. And of course, when I wake up, that's one of the first things I asked the doctors. I said, "I just had the craziest coma dream." And they said, you couldn't have because your brain was not having any activity. Ding! That's when I knew, whoa, hold on a second, this is pretty crazy. So of course I told this to people like Daniel Brinkley or Mark Anthony, and of course they were able to say, hey, you had an NDE, psychic activity or psychic ability should be unlocked, but of course, folks, I haven't noticed anything psychic since then. So now you just heard really the most exclusive thing that a handful of people, including the Cousins brothers, know, Yvonne Smith and Richard Dolan. And I really don't know who else really knows, but this was really, really, really bizarre. And like I said, I will never forget Bill dying, and remembering his face and the way he smiled when he said yes when I asked him, "Didn't you die in 1987?" Now, let's give some shout outs here to the people in, of course, YouTube. Of course, I mentioned, we have Lars Saturn. And Lars, I want to give you a shout out too, especially for writing back and forth. That's really cool of you. Mike, again, please, I hope I say this properly. Negus or Negus. And of course, Third Phase of Moon. These guys are the masters of getting UFO video from the world and putting it out there for you to see. You guys and gals listening and watching, it's your job to watch these videos and to be proactive. As I used to end every radio show I did with, disclosure is in your hands. POTUS, President of the United States, depending on where you are in the world, is not going to stand in the White House on a podium and say, "Hey, just so you know, we've seen extraterrestrial saucers and craft, and by the way, we've captured some live extraterrestrials. We just thought you should know they could come in our airspace, but we've been lying to you for so many decades." It's never going to happen, folks. It's only going to happen when I personally, this is what I believe, and so what some people who have been in the CIA, DIA, NSA, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, things like that have said that the message generally is when enough people, and I mean a majority of the people on this planet, believe without a doubt that we have been visited and are still being visited, and that craft exists here on this earth, meaning from either crashes and possibly even life, meaning that they are walking amongst us, like Dr. David Jacobs says, or are living in deep sea mounds, under the water, and bases. I wouldn't be surprised, but when more than half of the people, at least more than half, without a doubt believe, I think you're going to see more activity. You're never going to have a time where 50 saucers or triangles or rectangles all at once land and people come out and say, "Take me to your leader." I mean, crying out loud, we do have a UN ambassador to ETs. Why would we do that? Why would we need the Space Force? Sure, you could say it's to take down missiles. If you live in the US, I'm talking to you guys and gals. But you got all these questions and answers. Well, a lot of it's more questions. You guys have to really think what's underneath that. Why are we going there? If we have treaties with other nations that we're not supposed to do anything in space, well, then why all of a sudden are we arming it? Now, this part right here that I'm going to tell you is just a theory that I've heard, and of course, it's just totally up for debate. I can't even say I believe it. Some people, I believe John Lear is the one who told me this, says the reason why Apollo 13 didn't make it to the moon was because, in fact, we were sending a nuclear weapon to the moon. Was it to detonate? Was it just to arm it? I don't know. He doesn't know. Who does know, as a matter of fact? Jim Lovell, one of the Apollo 13 astronauts. Try to get any of them to talk to you. Although I can tell you, Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon, Apollo 14 astronaut, he was able to tell me some things that he could not say on air or publicly. Let's just say, for I'm just going to tell you this as fact. He grew up in Roswell. And so he was in high school in 1947 during the famous crash. But when he went to the moon and back, he was the hero, the town hero. And all of a sudden, people who had been in the military during Roswell all of a sudden had reason to tell the man who came back from the moon, really a true space traveler, someone who had been to another world. There are things that he would never say on radio or in interviews that I was fortunate to hear from him because I just let the guy talk. And you could hear some of my earliest interviews literally on Third Phase of the Moon. We did them with Blake and Brent Cousins. And there are some that I have not yet released because the last time I recorded him, he was really not doing well. You could barely understand what he said, and this was the Wednesday before he passed away on that Friday. So, what did we cover today? We covered 2007, why light flashes before your eyes. 1.5 to 2 seconds from the time I was hit behind and went into the cement pole, ripping my face literally hanging from the thread of my eyelid. It seemed like 20 to 30 thoughts. And that's why I say it sounded like a faucet, because the moment time went back to normal, it seemed like someone turned on the faucet full blast because there's so much blood that comes out from a head injury. It just was pouring out. And let me just throw in one little quick fact too. I had lost so much blood that when the ambulance came, they couldn't get an IV into me because the blood pressure was so low. And by the time I had made it to the hospital, more than half my blood was gone, and again, IVs couldn't work, so they had to do a central line, which was literally one into your neck, into, I don't know if it's your aorta, maybe a doctor or a nurse out there can tell you, but it has to be administered by a doctor, not a nurse. But I needed an instant blood transfusion. I've always wondered, how the heck did they know what my blood type was? But obviously it had to have been from something previous. Although I never had anything that serious before, there were instances that I'm sure they probably had my blood type. I also mentioned what got me into working with Third Phase of the Moon and eventually doing Dr. J Radio Live. And that was 2013, May of 2013, by Robert Bingham. And I've seen Third Phase of the Moon grow from, I believe, 30,000 subscribers at the time to over 700,000. Ladies and gentlemen, they are legit. And I also mentioned this coma incident, 2014. There were a lot of people that came to see me. Like I said, Blake and Brent, even though they were in Hawaii, they did send Bill, someone they know, to check on me. There was, lots of people. Robert Bingham was there. Joe Rodriguez, who used to participate in filming UFOs, but he no longer does. Jimmy Church was even there. Yvonne Smith. anybody who lived in that region who sort of knew me. And other than that, let me just tell you one other thing, which is totally unrelated to this, unless you guys have any guys and gals have any questions that you want me to answer. So Richard Doty, if you guys and gals heard his interview, he was in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. If you hear Linda Moulton Howe, she always tells this famous story of how she got into ufology. She said that she went to Kirkland Air Force Base, I think after doing the Calorie Searchers book, and she met the commander. And the commander, according to Richard Doty, was not the commander of Kirkland Air Force Base, but was somebody else, and they put up a sign that said commander. The rest, however, he is able to confirm. He was given by a higher up in the chain of command a briefing document, and he read it and he gave it to her. When I asked him if it was true, he said yes, to his knowledge it was true. Now, when I said, if you've been involved in counterintelligence. He said he was in the Air Force from 1967 and then as a separate entity in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Truthfully, I always thought it's all under the same umbrella of Air Force. Turns out they're not. But he said that in 77 to 87 as a special agent in the OSI, in 1982, after an incident, maybe it was 83, an incident at Kirkland Air Force Base that involved something extraterrestrial, he and 5 others were taken to Area 51. This might have been maybe his first. He went twice to Area 51 for a tour. And he said that a full bird colonel showed him a 20-minute clip, which included footage from 1942 up to 1969, and afterwards was a Q&A. He said that at the time it was either 6 or 7 different species he was told about, and one of the species was not telepathic. As a matter of fact, many of you might have heard this story because it's been circulating for decades among the UFO community, is that this creature was making noises that no one can understand. So what they did is they installed a voice box, and very quickly, and I'm not talking about seconds or hours, I don't know how long, but this extraterrestrial entity was able to learn and speak English very rudimentary through this voice box. So during the interview, if you recall, I said when he mentioned that about a minute or so of this footage has been leaked, is available. I said, do you mean the Skinny Bob footage? If any of you don't know what the Skinny Bob footage is, just search on Google or YouTube and you will find a black and white footage which seems like an ET in a black sort of jumpsuit, and then another one that shows a crashed disc with a dead ET on the ground, and 2 flying saucers which look so weird and fake, but at the same time, there's so much good footage out there. If you wanted to fake it, why not just grab something better? But I think that's part of what makes it so real. So I asked him on air, is it the Skinny Bob footage? He says, I don't know, I have to see it. We finished the interview, and so I shared the link with him. As a matter of fact, if you guys want, I will find you exactly the email that he wrote back. And I truly believe this guy because there's not very many people. And let me just tell you this too. The reason why he said he got into talking about extraterrestrials is because he had read a lot of books from all these researchers and had been to a lot of events. Conscious Life Expo, I mean, I don't know what it was back then, or Ozark UFO Conference, Contact in the Desert is fairly new, but things like that. And he saw a bunch of researchers talking. And he said they're always half right, but half wrong. And he wanted to set the record straight. Let me find you this interview or this email from him of what he says directly. Let's see. Richard Doty. Let's find him, and I will tell you folks what he wrote me. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Let me grab the other email. Unfortunately, I have too many email accounts, folks. 13 to be exact. So if any of you have a bunch of emails, I strongly suggest don't let a bunch get into you. Okay, let's find it here. Richard Doty. Now this is, again, word for word what he wrote me. Okay, where is he? No. Doty. Okay. Okay, this is Dr. J. Yes, these are actual government footage of a real event. Segments were cut out of the original film, but these are the actual film scenes I observed during my briefing. Richard D. Dot. I really believe him, folks. Say what you want to say about him. I've interviewed a lot of people, not just on air, not just for Third Phase of Moon, but because of my own curiosity. And if you guys want to know something else too, how this whole thing started and why I'm not sitting before a judge arguing a civil or criminal case or defending somebody, is curiosity. I'll tell you a couple more things since we got some listeners. Let me get my drink open here and a cigar lit for this occasion. Okay, I already knew, folks. Again, this is literally straight to YouTube, exclusive. Nobody has ever told this story before. I knew without a doubt we are not alone. I absolutely knew we weren't alone. And yes, Lars, I absolutely got your email. And if it's something to respond or say right now, let me get to that too. So I remember being, let's see, let me see here. Yes, I got it, Lars. Thank you, and I will write you back after that. I know I did, which is good because you've already gotten the response. Okay, so I was in Sunday school, and what's really cool is the years so happen to fall. As so, 1984, I was 4 years old, except because I was born November 30th. So, 1993, I was 13. 2018, I was 38, etc. I knew without a doubt we were not alone. I don't know why. I just knew we were not alone. I never had any dreams of being abducted. I've never seen an ET other than video of what's supposed to be an ET, especially these days, what could be faked. But I just knew without a doubt. And when I was in Sunday school, this is 1984, folks, I remember all of a sudden, when we were talking about Jesus and the Virgin Mary and Angel Gabriel and the three kings, I just burst out and told my Sunday school teacher, Jesus was an alien. Angel Gabriel was an alien, and I don't even know how I knew the word abductee, but I said the Virgin Mary was an abductee, hence Jesus being a hybrid. And I said the three kings were not following a star; they were following a UFO. How I knew this, I don't know, folks. I really don't know. But this started a super obsession with them. Flash forward to several months. My father used to own 3 restaurants, one of them in West Covina. And at the time, of course, I still have a younger brother, 2 years younger, who's in Kuwait. If you're listening in Kuwait, Steve, this is to you. Me and him and his friend, my father, one of his restaurants was the corner of a strip mall. There was a strip mall behind it. And at that age, we want to go toy shopping. And there was a Salvation Army thrift shop. So every week we used to go to see the restaurant on the weekends and go with my mother and my brother to see my father. The first thing me and my brother would do would go out and check to see what new toys they had. So leaving this toys or the Salvation Army thrift shop with my brother and his friend, I look up in the sky and this is total child terms of how I describe this. Imagine as you're 4, and this is how you describe extraterrestrial saucer or whatever it is. I described it as an upside down cereal bowl that was metal. Think about that. What's a metal cereal bowl? A dome shaped craft. There was a guy on a bicycle, not a motorcycle, but a bicycle. Helmet, those really tight shorts from the 80s, and those curved handles on those speed bikes. And he was passing by, and I said, Mister, what's that? And he says, it's a weather balloon. I said, no, it's not, because this thing was making weird maneuvers. And I remember that he was so transfixed as he got off, transfixed on this object, the bike fell over. Someone who's this into biking probably had a really expensive bike, paid no attention when this bike hit the floor. I ran inside, leaving my brother and his friend outside with this gentleman with the bicycle to grab my mother to get some witness out there because there was clearly other people looking. Unfortunately, by the time she came out and I grabbed her to come out, she was helping a customer. Of course, she didn't believe. To this day, they don't believe. She she saw the aftermath, which was people pulled over on the side of the street, which was Arrow Highway, if you guys are familiar with West Covina. And let's just say they're in the driver's seat. Well, the driver's door was open, 1 foot out, with their left foot pointing up, and people are just talking. So you see the aftermath of a massive sighting. When I say massive, I'm talking at least 30 plus people that I saw within my own proximity that saw this object. And since my parents are from Greek origin, there was no such thing as allowance. You wanted money, you had to work for it. So from 1984, I would have to literally bus tables or seat people at the restaurant and serve them drinks until I was 9 years old when I was able to work the cash register. So I would earn a whopping $10 for each day of work. And what I used to do is I'd scour the LA Times, and there was this one guy from MUFON who would always sell UFO videos, whether it be a collection of unsolved mysteries, sightings, or any of the documentaries that existed in the 80s up until the very early 90s. Over the course of the years, I had bought everything from him where there was nothing else to buy. And let's flash forward now to 1990. Then I was in Greece with my family for an extended vacation in the summer. I can't tell you which month this was, but this was somewhere between June, July, and August. We were going, if you're familiar with Greece, we were going from Volos, and we were going from a small village called Tripoli into Argalasti, which is the next village over. And in order to get to it, you literally have to cross a forest. And we were in a taxi. My father was in the passenger side. I was behind the taxi driver on the driver's side, looking out the window, my brother in the middle, and my mother on the right side. And there's nothing in the sky except stars, the moon, and it's so dark because it's the forest. All of a sudden, I see, and we all see this, it looks like a ball, and it's traveling parallel to the ground, literally just across the sky. And it's so bright. The best way I could describe it is it's the color of the moon, only brighter. And behind it is 10, 12, 13, whatever, smaller balls chasing it. So we're all talking about this. We get to the village, we sleep, whatever. We have a great story. Turns out that we didn't just see it. This was such massive news. This dominated the news in Greece. Newspapers, TVs, everything for 3 days. The Soviets at the time, 1990, released a statement saying no satellites returned, and there was no activity whatsoever because this crisscrossed or crossed through the entire country of Greece, at least mainland Greece, probably into what I think if it was going northwest into Albania or whatever, if it was going to or northeast, if it was going to the west, Italy, who knows? The point is a lot of people saw it, and the Americans, of course, released a statement saying NASA had no satellites in reentry, nothing of the type. So those are the two sightings I've had, 1984, 1990, and then flash forward to 2013 when I saw that video on third phase of the moon, which you still can find, which has Robert Bingham talking about he's doing this other event near this statue. I don't even know what the name of the statue is, in MacArthur Park, Los Angeles. And that's the event that I went to where I filmed something, saw things, and then hence started off on this entire project derailing my career as being a lawyer or anything of the such or a mediator, and had talking to you fine folks and watching some fascinating video and meeting some really cool people. Now, let's see who else we have here. I want to thank again, we have Lars, thank you. Yes, Jesus was an alien. I really, really believe so. I mean, this is my own honest belief. I think the angel Gabriel, because all the angels at the time, an angel was just someone who came from above, right? If you have so many abductees who are women, and they talk about being abducted, and all of a sudden their babies being taken by these extraterrestrials sometime in the first or trimester. I believe it's the second trimester, and they don't have sex, and yet they're pregnant. Now, you have a Virgin Mary who is all of a sudden pregnant. You have the angel Gabriel, and a lot of people talk about extraterrestrials who look like human. And so what if the angel Gabriel was in fact extraterrestrial? And on top of that, you have the three kings following this star. What if the star was in fact a craft and was sending a message telepathically to these three people to follow this? Anyhow, there's just so many great stuff that literally, if you go back through the history, Eric von Daniken is one of my good friends who literally can go through the Bible and pinpoint each and every instance that will show you that this cannot be explained by anything conventional. Anyhow, folks, this was my testimony. I've been saving this for years. You may have caught in bits and pieces of it, but never have I told you this full story. And I do hope you all enjoyed it. And if anybody has some questions, I see Lars. I know you mentioned DMT. I don't know. I mean, if that's what you get right before you die, it's absolutely possible. But again, it's got that very similarity of light. Lots of light, talking to someone who was dead very vividly, and the fields of infinity, meaning that no matter which direction I looked, if it wasn't the ocean, there was nothing there. I mean, it's like when I'm free falling and skydiving, and you look in any direction, you see nothing. I mean, for as far as the earth can extend. DMT, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised as people die, they get an injection from their brains of DMT, endorphins, dopamine, all of the above that gives them these illusions. It very well could have been, absolutely. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just telling you this is what happened when I was told I had no brain activity. And the irony is no matter how many days, weeks I was out, this seemed like 10 minutes maximum. You know, literally, you're propofol into a coma, boom, you're awake, told. I said I have craziest coma dream because by the time I was out of the coma, they removed the tube. They said you couldn't have had a dream, you had no brain activity. So again, there's a lot, literally a lot to question about this, but I just figured you guys and gals should know it. Let's see who else we have here. Any other questions? I'm going to go from the top bottom. Let's go here. Um, let's see here. I already mentioned Lars. I already mentioned Mike, Third Phase of Moon, and David Lopez. And we got Robot. Oh, you had an ND too. I'd love for you to talk about it sometime. Carmen Smith. And I see, Mike, you wrote a little airplane emoji. I hope you guys go skydiving too. All of you, if you start skydiving, please let me know. I would love to jump with all of you. Um, Lars, you mentioned what is your perspective? Do you mean my perspective on Jesus or what I think happened? I'll let you answer that at the very bottom. I'm going to go, or unless you're asking someone else. And yes, I know some people may be laughing, and Lars, thank you for mentioning you're not, because this is a very serious. I mean, this isn't. I'm not making any jokes here. I'm not adding to any of this. That's why I mentioned the first part of the coma as totally open to interpretation. The only person I've told, I mentioned a couple people, but because people think you're just twisted. How can you think of this van full of Mexicans, bald-headed Mexicans that talk without their mouths moving and no wheels. That's why I mentioned it to Yvonne Smith. And of course, in her eyes, immediately she's like, "You've been abducted. We got to talk about this." But I highly doubt that. I don't think I was taken when I was in a coma and put back in the hospital, although it's possible. But the second part really, really makes sense considering it was someone who did, in fact, die in 1987. Anything else? Yes, of course, I mentioned, Lars, I did get your email, and anything else. I appreciate what you're saying, too, that I'm great. And again, this is why I do this, folks. And remember, please check out Third Phase of Moon. And if there's any interview you want to hear, check out the Dr. J Radio Live channel. And remember, it's not just this YouTube channel, folks. You can go to drjradiolive.com, which truthfully, I don't know how much longer I'm going to have the website because I don't know what it serves other than gathering emails for an email list that has never sent anything out. And I don't even think I'm ever going to go down the route of archiving, but if it does, we'll find out. But really, YouTube is what you guys should all remember. But the same name, Dr. J Radio Live, DRJ Radio Live, is the same for everything. If you don't have a Minds account, MINDS, open one. It pays you in Ethereum-based tokens, for using it. It's literally like a Facebook slash Instagram slash all of the social media, except it pays you in cryptocurrency. The YouTube equivalent or the cryptocurrency equivalent of YouTube is bit.tube. That's what it is. And I'm also on there. Mine's BitTube, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Google, Gmail, whatever you name, whatever you could think of, chances are there's an account and it's at DRJ Radio Live. With that being said, folks, if there is anybody with amazing footage or anything cool, any cool testimony, particularly footage, please share it with me, and we will absolutely do some analysis. And more than likely, we'll get Third Phase of the Moon involved if it's really amazing footage, because they're amazing at slowing things down and magnifying. Where I can't say I really have those technical skills. If it's legally related, then I can tell you about that. If it's intelligence related, I can tell you about that. But if it's technically about things that require magnifying images or changing the color palette or infrared, things like that, that is what the Cousins brothers do best, which is why they literally are the top of putting out UFO videos that come for viewers like you that capture something amazing and send it to them. So if you got some amazing footage and you get it to me, chances are that's where it's going to end up. If you got any cool testimony, by all means, share it with me. This is all for you folks. And if you have guest requests, as long as I keep doing them, by all means, you tell me and we will make it happen. There really isn't anybody in the UFO field that I can see I haven't interviewed. There's probably a handful of people. I mean, even Art Bell was interviewed at some point by Third Phase of Moon and myself when I was working with them. That's a whole nother story. Anyhow, folks, I believe I said everything else. And yes, Lars, let's bend reality and the dimension. And you know what? If you recall that Forbes guest, and this I got to relight the cigar for, that Forbes guest said something fascinating. Hold on a second. He said that we should be spending money having theoretical physicists working 24/7 to find a way to travel faster than light, meaning create Einstein-Rosen bridges, aka wormholes, because it is impossible for us to go from A to B in a straight line. Think about everything, even Alpha Centauri. How far is that? How long would it take us to get there in a traditional spacecraft, whether it be something like the Voyager or a Saturn V rocket that we use in Apollo, or even what Elon Musk right now is in SpaceX? It's impossible, folks. Even if we went the speed of light, you're not going to get there anytime soon. Or Zeta Reticuli, where Betty and Barney Hill, when they were shown the star map and the extraterrestrials explained that they occupy 2 planets in the solar system. I think they said it was over 30 light years, something like that away. How in the heck can you get there? Well, Einstein proved that if you can create artificial gravity, then you in fact can make things such as wormholes, cloaking, invisibility, time travel. All of that becomes possible. And I still can't wrap my head around time travel, really. I really can't wrap my head around it, because how do you explain the grandfather paradox unless you just talk about all these different dimensions? And for those of you folks who hear time travelers as say from the future, and if you want to do your own investigation, let me tell you the number one question to ask them. Ask them, who's going to be president? And if there's someone who has come out, say, in 2013, anytime before 2015, 2010, 2003, that says, hey, I'm from the year 2050, say, if it's too bad you can't go back in time, but if any of them predicted accurately that Donald Trump was going to become president before he announced in 2015, well, then they could be on the right track. But in 2014, if anybody out there said they were going to be, or Donald Trump was going to be president, everyone would be laughing. As a matter of fact, I remember when he announced, and this is the time I was working for Art Bell, and it was a joke to Art. But then he started to take him seriously. He's like, he's starting to say some things that I'd like to talk to him about. Well, Art Bell didn't last long enough on air, and of course, the interview with Donald Trump never lasted. But that is the number one question I think all of you should ask time travelers. Are time travelers walking amongst us? Is it possible? Absolutely. But the bigger question, folks, is are hybrids walking amongst us? And the reason why I think there are is because each generation of people who have been taken, especially women, and their babies or hybrids have been created, it seems that these hybrids look more and more human. If that's the case, then at some point you would think that these hybrids look identically like human. Well, according to Dr. Jacobs, most recently, I'd say in the last 15 years, alien abductees, particularly women who are shown their ET children, their hybrid children, this is where it gets bizarre, folks. We're shown regular human activities, and they ask the human beings, like the woman, what do you do? For instance, they were shown a grocery store and say, what do you do? What do you buy? They were shown a door of a house. What do you do? Apparently, yeah, they had to show them you have to use a key and the doorknob. They were shown scenes of a kitchen. How do you operate the refrigerator, the toaster? All of these beg the question is are or the question is, are these extraterrestrials being trained to live amongst us? And I truly believe the answer is yes. Now, there's so much more to this, so much more we can talk about, folks. I just wanted to let you know that this is the second of several shows, or not even shows, videos that are exclusive to YouTube without a traditional guest. And I want to thank Third Phase of the Moon for giving me that push to do more of these, because this is where it's at, folks. YouTube Nation rocks. All you fine people in there are really cool. You have the coolest comments and the coolest questions. Again, I want to thanks to Third Phase of the Moon for giving me that extra push, and I gave a thanks to all the people in YouTube Nation. Let me give one more shout out to each and every individual one. As I mentioned, we have Mike Regis. Of course, we have Lars Saturn, David Lopez, Carmen Smith, and let's see. Did I miss anybody? I believe we caught them all. So with that being said, folks, remember, disclosure is in your hands. With that being said, unless I release a very special video tomorrow, I will see you Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Join us, and we'll do more. Thanks again. Have a